All right, guys, this is a bit of an emergency segment here. This is a huge breaking news story which requires as much talk as possible, as much coverage as possible. Everybody's got to spread the word on this to the high heavens because it is a crime that you're probably hearing about this first from me. This should be on CNN. This should be on MSNBC. This should be on Fox News. It should be everywhere. Hundreds of rural hospitals are at risk of closing, threatening critical care. Hundreds of hospitals in rural parts of the United States are in danger of closing because they can no longer afford to stay open, according to a new report from the Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform. The main reason, insurance companies pay them much less than their big city counterparts for the same services. In Trinity, Texas, about 90 miles north of Houston, Midcoast Medical Center recently had to close its doors. It has a huge impact on the community. We will lose lives. 400 people a month come here, said the person who runs that hospital. In the East Texas Piney Woods, Midcoast was more than a building. It was a lifeline where babies were born and where the heart of Kathy, Courtney's 90-year-old husband, was restarted, saving his life. Courtney said she and her husband had used the facility about 6 times in the last 14 months. By the way, we're going to get to this in just a second, but this is also directly because of the Republican bill, Trump's bill. That's why these hospitals are probably going to go out of business if this shit passes. Okay. Midcoast officials told CBS News the closure was driven by the same factors that have closed other rural hospitals. Low reimbursement rates from elderly patients' Medicare and Medicaid coverage, which made up most of the hospital's budget. Hospitals in urban areas, meanwhile, get significantly more reimbursement from their patients who have private insurance, which tends to pay more. Republicans' proposed cuts to Medicaid could leave more than 8.5 million people uninsured, according to the CBO, and force even more rural hospitals to close. The Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform's report found that 742 rural hospitals are at risk of closing, with over 300 of those being classified as immediate risk. Courtney's husband is now home and doing well, but the 87-year-old said she worries that if there's another emergency, they won't make it to the nearest hospital now that Midcoast is closed. While Midcoast was a 10-minute drive, the closest medical center is now more than half an hour away, Courtney said. 742 rural hospitals. The Republican Party is all in on getting a bill passed which slashes Medicaid to the tune of $880 billion. It basically makes Medicaid null and void, like doesn't exist. It's gone. It's defunct. It's over. By the way, because of the PAYGO rules, effectively, if they were to get this bill that they want passed, if they get it passed, that also cuts Medicare. So healthcare for elderly people in this country and healthcare for low-income people and disabled people, that is where they're cutting. That's where they're cutting. At the exact same time, they're trying to do a $1.1 trillion Pentagon budget, military budget, biggest one in history, 13% increase. Pentagon failed 7 audits in a row, can't account for over 60% of their money. It's all going to bombing kids into executives pocketing the money. That, they get a blank check. But now, because of this bill, 742 rural hospitals might close. Think about that. Think about how insane that is, y'all. Think about how insane that is. Look, I understand that a story like this, it's not as sexy as a lot of other stories, which might get the headlines, which might get the chatter on Twitter or other social media outlets. I understand that. But at the same time, people's lives have to matter. And a story like this has to matter. That this should lead to a tsunami of backlash where the American people go to the Capitol. Just like we saw, God bless them, there were a bunch of people who went and protested when this bill was in committee. You had these people in wheelchairs saying, you are trying to kill me. If this bill passes, you are killing me. I can't afford the care that I need. None of us can. What are we going to do if you slash this shit? And now here we are. So every Democrat, wakey, we got to go here. Like, this is the shit you should be talking about. This is the shit you should be clobbering them over the head with. The news outlets, let's go, cover it. This is the Republican Party. This is what they want to do. This is their strategy. This is the policy change they would like to see. Fuck the rural hospitals. Shut them down, over 740 of them. Who cares about the downside? Because at the end of the day, all we care about is that gigantic military budget and cutting taxes for the wealthy. Trump raises taxes on working Americans and cuts it on the wealthiest Americans. That's his own bill. They've crunched the numbers. Never mind the tariffs, which are effectively a huge tax increase on the bottom 90%. This is what they want to do, y'all. 742 hospitals at risk of closing. 300 would almost immediately would go under. All right, more. So Americans for Tax Fairness put this out here. This is from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. House Republican plan would take health care and food assistance away from people to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy. The plan would cut health coverage by at least $800 billion and SNAP, that's food stamps, so food for people who need it, by roughly $300 billion, while giving the wealthy $1.1 trillion in tax cuts. So you see that here in chart form. This really speaks for itself. There's no extra commentary needed. This is their priority. They are class warriors. They are class warriors on behalf of the billionaires and the robber barons. We already live in a country with wealth inequality and income inequality that's worse than we had the French Revolution, and they're intent on making that worse. Now, by the way, Rick Scott, talking about Medicaid, listen to what he has to say.
One of the sticking points is this business about paying able-bodied 30-year-old men without dependents welfare with no work requirement. Why do some of your colleagues have a problem with that?
It doesn't make sense to me. Number one is if you don't want to work, you're the one that decided you don't want health care.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, Medicaid is supposed to be for children that don't have health care and people with chronic illness. I remember when my brother couldn't get health care, I grew up in public housing. Today, that child might not get it because of what these states are doing. They get more money to take care of able-bodied adults.
So first of all, they're cutting it from those people too. So the idea he's like, I just want to protect the most vulnerable. That's not true. Second of all, what he's saying is, if you are a young man and you are unemployed, go fuck yourself. And they act like it's just a decision. It's a personal lifestyle choice that you make as a young man. If you don't have a job, it's just because you're lazy. You're a parasite. You're a moocher. You don't care. You want to lay on the couch all day and watch TV. When the reality is there are macroeconomic factors. When there's a recession, when there's a depression, when there's, say, a trade war that has unintended consequences, people will lose their jobs through no fault of their own. So if you're single or you don't have kids, you don't have a family, and you happen to lose your job, he's saying you don't deserve health care. Really? Well, tell somebody in that situation who gets cancer, yeah, I want you to go bankrupt. Fuck off. You shouldn't even get health care. What, you're young and you're unemployed and you don't have a family, so why do you count? This is eugenic shit that we're listening to right here. But by the way, here he is. Man, these young unemployed men are scamming the system, bro. We need to force them to go to work even if they can't find a job. Ready for this? I'm sure a lot of you know this already. While Rick Scott was CEO of Columbia HCA, the company defrauded Medicare and Medicaid so extensively that it earned itself 14 felony convictions and a $1.7 billion fine. The gall it takes for him to say that low-income people should be kicked off Medicaid is breathtaking. He is the biggest Medicaid fraudster in the history of the United States of America. He's a criminal. He's a thug. He's a gangster. He should be locked up. He should be behind bars for the rest of his fucking life for what he did. And he has the nerve to say, if you're young and unemployed, you don't deserve health care, and I'm going to take it from you. There is a special place in hell for these fucking demons, y'all. A special place in hell. I am disgusted by these charlatans, these cretins, these degenerates. That's what they are. And now you know what they're working on. Slashing healthcare. At the same time, they cut taxes for the rich. Slashing food stamps. At the same time, they do a disgustingly large military budget. And the consequences of that, sorry, did 742 rural hospitals go under? Tee-hee-hee. Are people going to die as a result of that? Tee-hee-hee. I don't really care. This is who they are. This is who they are. Commit it to memory and act accordingly. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.